YouTube rotates through movies that you can watch for free with ads without purchasing YouTube Premium. I like to put these on in the background while I'm working on other stuff, and for the past month or so, Norbit has come on no less than 10 times. It's one of those early 2000s movies that was a smash hit but slated by critics. It's also one of those Eddie Murphy costumey movies. In this film, he plays 3 roles, one of which is an Asian face role. The thesis of this video is, I have an unhinged theory about Norbit, and I just have to tell you about it, and you need to tell me if I'm crazy or not. That's it. That's the video. Here's a really quick note just to say that this film, in hindsight, is not edited as well as it could be. Of course, the editing was a little difficult at times with Eddie Murphy playing 3 roles and then those characters having scenes together, but there are very noticeable body doubles, there's a lot of bad CGI, and Terry Crews has hair sometimes, and then other times he doesn't have hair. And as great as Looking for You by Kirk Franklin is, it's not a love song, so I don't know why it ends this rom-com. So the film hasn't aged super well in that regard, in my opinion. But what's it actually about? Our main character Norbit was thrown into an orphanage as an infant, and he spent his entire childhood there, too ugly and weird to be adopted. He makes one friend at the orphanage named Kate, who is quickly adopted, which leaves him alone again. One day, Rasputia does him the solid of getting rid of a couple of bullies, and after that, he's a part of the Latimore family. For what is essentially the rest of the film, Norbit's trapped in the Latimore's clutches due to what is essentially one nice gesture from Rasputia, an extending of the olive branch, if you will. Right away, I'll say that the problem with Rasputia is not that she's fat. Her problem is that she's a bad person. She punches Norbit in the face pretty early in the film. He catches her in bed with another man and she tells him it never happened. She's needlessly violent to animals. She lies about being pregnant. She's incredibly rude. She uses her family's power and influence to manipulate people sexually. She's awful. But we also have to acknowledge that Rasputia is the only fat-coded person in the film. And so I'm talking about subtextual coding. Subtext is any content of a creative work which is not announced explicitly, but is implicit or becomes something understood by the audience. And coding just refers to the set of rules we use to interpret the subtext. For example, if a character always appears in scenes next to a trash can or to things that we know to be trash, we would assume that that character is trash or that they stink or something like that due to what's coded in the subtext of the scene. Rasputia is the only person called fat in this movie. We focus on the clothing that she wears because it calls attention to her body. She has a voracious appetite. She barely fits in the driver's seat of her car. She breaks the turnstile at the water park. She constantly uses her size to physically intimidate people. There are other fat people in the movie, like these guys, but we're never told to pay attention to their bodies. Perhaps it's because Rasputia is a main character, but we never really pay attention to Norbit's body either. He's just smaller than Rasputia, just like everybody else. This is in contrast to Kate, who is constantly referred to as skinny.
He's on a date with that fine skinny guy.
And we can't deny that Rasputia is evil and Kate is the pure angelic good. I think there's something to be said about the style of comedy that is black men portraying black women in the loudest, crudest, and most crass ways possible, right? Think Shanae or Wanda. Whether you think these portrayals are funny or not isn't for me to police or to judge you even, I don't care. But we can agree that they aren't positive portrayals, right? But in terms of Rasputia's character, I couldn't help but ask myself these questions. Does the fact that Rasputia is treated as the only fat person here make the film fatphobic in a way that we should care about? Is this movie just going, ha ha, a fat person is fat, ha, without any further commentary or humor that we're meant to enjoy? Rasputia is called a gorilla by Mr. Wong. Are low-hanging fruit sort of jokes like that the crux of the film, or is there something else being said? What if I told you that this film, Norbit, is actually a commentary on consumerism and labor. I know, that's crazy, right? Toward the beginning, the film establishes that not only is Rasputia fat, she's getting bigger and bigger, and Norbit says that she's eating too much before saying the car is getting smaller as a way to avoid her wrath. You'll notice that even though Rasputia is as big as she is, we don't see her eat often. We see her about to eat chicken as a child. We see her with frosting on her face at the wedding, drinking wine coolers, and requesting food a few times, but we don't actually see her eat all that often. We do see her suck the jelly out of these donuts. The Latimores are gluttonous, but not because of food. They're gluttonous because of literally everything else. Every day, Rasputia has a different wig and outfit. In the beginning, when we see a montage of Norbit and Rasputia's nasty time, they each wear different outfits each time. Later, she addresses her various hairstyles and says that she always gets herself done up because
everybody in this town knows that Rasputia Latimore is fine.
But continuing on, it isn't enough that she's married to Norbit. She wants Buster too. We see Rasputia watching an episode of Maury, and television is used as little more than a vehicle for advertisements, especially during those daytime and early afternoon slots. I said the Latimores are gluttonous because this also extends to her waterhead-ass brothers. First, Norbit is their bookkeeper. His role is to track and monitor their spending, but he's someone that they can easily bully into silence so that they can do whatever they want with their money. It's not enough for them to have a successful construction company. They also want to take money from the other business owners through the guise of providing security to them. For all intents and purposes, the Latimores are Big Pharma's cousin, Big Construction. Rasputia's brothers are muscular, not fat, yet they have the same gluttonous qualities. So the film is really about big versus small. Here's more evidence. At the end of the film, all the townspeople come to Norbit's defense and decide that they aren't going to be bullied by the Latimores anymore. It's a bunch of small business owners coming together to take a stand for their community, a community that the big business doesn't see any value in. Remember how Rasputia is getting bigger and bigger, so big that she can barely fit in her car? The Latimore's presence in town is also getting larger and larger. This idea meets with another big versus small concept in the film, and that is Mr. Wong and his whaling. The film is surprisingly consistent with Mr. Wong's desires to become a whaler. He practices with the children of the orphanage in the beginning of the film. The first time the Latimores try to strong arm him, we see his spear. When Kate comes to buy the orphanage, she mentions it, and then at the end, we see his spear again. It's kind of ridiculous that this elderly man has decided to switch life paths into such a physically taxing field at this moment, but his spearing Rasputia at the end is supposed to show us that he's capable after all. He's an openly racist but well-intentioned character. Not all allies are perfect. We can also look at the way that their business practices are characterized versus the ways that the others in the film are characterized. The Latimores have a mysterious source of money that the movie doesn't expound upon, but we're left to assume that it's illegitimate or shady since this is true of their current practices. This is not the case of Kate, who only has money to invest in the orphanage because she sold the clothing store she owned. The film also juxtaposes the Latimores with Dion, a scammer living above his means and attempting to use other people's money to transcend class lines. The Latimores were shilling large amounts of money from other businesses, while Dion was shilling money from women under the guise of romantic or other interpersonal relationships. There's an implication that Dion will be tracked down briefly by the women of his past, but he'll probably be fine, just like the Latimores. Of course, they moved to Mexico and have to start their strip club there, but they still started a strip club despite their nefarious business practices, didn't they? That's still a form of success, isn't it? The other small business owners don't really have a role in the film outside of being a glorified Greek chorus, and then kind of sacrificing themselves at the end. Really, there are only two legitimate businessmen that we see in action in this film, and they always roll together. Hope Sweet Jesus and Lord Have Mercy. Yes, those are their names. That's why they went off like that in the church scene. Y'all was wondering why the church scene's so good? It's because they're Christian. By the way, if you want to know my thoughts on the pimp archetype and more importantly on the career trajectory of Cat Williams, let me know. I have some nuanced thoughts. These two are constantly advertising their products. When Mr. Wong asks for their help stalling the wedding, they literally make a portion of it into an infomercial, disguised as an entertaining and helpful message, aka an infomercial. They begin collecting tithes, and it's implied that they pocket the money. It's very clear that these two want money, just like the Latimores. Also, the Pimps are expanding. They mentioned to Norbit that they now own the bath store, and it's clear that they intend to keep on expanding their LLC or whatever. However, they seem to be decent business owners and community members. At least that's what the film wants us to believe. They are extremely diplomatic with their employees. They give Norbit some free ribs for the kids. They even started a new pimp business venture inspired by the community's block party event. Compare this to the way that the brothers tried to intimidate Norbit into getting Kate to sign to transfer the liquor license, and in Rasputia's You Do It montage. The pimps are willing to jump into the fray to help a friend. They even give Norbit a pimp makeover for the customary rom-com montage on short notice. They are functioning members of this community. I'm currently working on a deep dive into the Boondocks, starting with the comics, and here's something that you may not know. Huey Freeman hates Eddie Griffin. He does not think Eddie Griffin deserves a platform or an entertainment career. And every time that it's brought up in one of the comics I read, I think it's so funny because it's just such a weird thing to harp on. Back to what we were doing. The film makes it so easy to dislike Rasputia and her brothers that we root for the altogether unrealistic relationship between Kate and Norbit. Think about it. These two haven't seen each other since they were kindergarten age, and after reuniting 15, 20 years in the future, they decide to be together after like a week. This is an overcorrection for Norbit, who has never been treated well by literally anyone, so he marries the first woman that's nice to him. His relationship with Kate is a reminder of childhood innocence in a world that has proven itself to be anything but, which is super valuable. But the ease with which Kate was scammed by Dion and Norbit was integrated into the Latimore family makes this return to innocence at the end seem almost foolish. But if we continue our metaphor that compares the Latimores to big business, what Norbit and Kate have done is turn from a bigger consumerist culture to nurturing the financial ecosystem of their town, and dare I say, they become anti-consumerist. The religious criticism of materialism asserts that materialist consumerism interferes with the connection between the individual and God. Outside of the marriage scenes that take place in the church, why else would Kirk Franklin's Looking for You be used over the end credits? The scene where the pimps take over the wedding works because of the role that religion plays in the Black community. Year after year, Black Americans are more religious than other demographics, and remnants of religious beliefs linger in our vernacular and other cultural aspects, despite your own beliefs about religion. But this isn't a religious film, so why else is this song used at the end if not to say, turn away from your materialistic and consumerist ideals and instead turn to God because he's got what you're looking for? This movie is genius, but on the low. The film actually starts with a gospel song called Standing in the Safety Zone by the Fearful Four. It's a song about remaining righteous, even if you are doing so all by yourself. There are also other gospel songs kind of sprinkled throughout the film, most of them in relation to Dion and Kate's wedding. Norbit is faced with a life where he will spend a lot of time alone, doing what he thinks is right in spite of others, and at the end, Kate, the one he's been looking for, returns to do right with him, and they both set off on the anti-consumerist path of righteousness. But hey, that's just a theory that I came up with and wrote down.